a few hundred, but not significant. This time around, however, the census has created new census tracts and new block groups, so those larger aggregate forms of population measurement, which means they also change the block group blocks, the mechanisms we use to create those changes and match those wards up within the 10%. To the tune of, for example, Ward 2 had a drop of 1,377. That's just not even logical. We deal with development. We actually send addresses to the census with regards to new construction, demolition, and they also pull information from our building permits as well as the county auditor. So Heather Heckman, who's the development planner, is the primary staff person that works with me on this, and I just have to sing her accolades because she's had maps. We've created clear overlays of old to new. She has been running numbers nonstop for weeks. And through this process, we were able to, one of the first steps we did is we reached out to the GIS manager at the county, Joe Reichlin. He is excellent with data, and we asked him to please pull down from the census, because this year we pulled it down, the data. They didn't give us discs like they had in the past. Pull down, based on our ward boundaries, what those block groups would be. He pulled down the exact same ones we did. So that was a good check that we were pulling the correct data. So then we had to take the data and look at the 2010 census tract and block groups, and then find the new ones and see how those compared over. So I'm happy to say that we have been able to reduce the difference in the Ward 2 to a negative 221. But we still have deltas in other areas that are not logical. Every ward is showing a change that some can be explained with some of the new housing that went in and around the university, but not all of it. So I reached out to the Secretary of State's office as well as several people at the census. The census is offering a process called the Census Count Question Resolution, CQR. It actually is out right now for public comment in the Federal Register, and the issue, it starts in January. So in other words, I want the census to look at what we're looking at and make sure that those numbers of change are verified. Because because of the change in the census tracts, block groups, and block group blocks, everything's moving. So we would prefer that the census we go through this process as a community and have that done. So once they verify our information, then at that point we would draw the wards. So the ward process is the delta cannot be more than 10%. So the things that are fixed is our overall population, which will be 28,215. So our average is 4,703, which the 10% would be 470. So basically our range factor is the ward can be 235 more, 235 less. So we have to get them all within those confines. So because some of the differences in the wards, for example, Ward 1 has a reduction of 404, which also doesn't actually seem to make sense considering we had two additional phases of a subdivision in Riverbend dedicated. So we need those kind of numbers to look out, but every one of them has had a reduction or an increase. So I'm basically here to tell you that typically you would be looking at wards and approving those legislatively, but we will be bringing them back to you most likely in February or March once we get the data verified and vetted through the census, because now we'll have somebody assigned to us to work directly with Heather and I on those questions. Because back in 2018, we did a process called LUCA. It's basically where our local area submits new addresses and old addresses. They compare it to what they've gotten, and we go back and forth on that. So we'll be looking at that data as well, just to make sure that we're really assigning these ward boundaries in a way that is representative of the entire community. So I can take any questions.
Any questions, Mr. Turner?
Yeah, Bridget, what other factors are in the defining of wards? Where does contiguousness, interest, where do those fall in?
The only factor that is used in the ward boundaries as dictated by the Ohio Revised Code is population. They do need to be contiguous. So I couldn't, for example, take Ward 3 here and then grab a block group block from the west side of town and add it. They do need to be contiguous for sure, but the only factor is population. I've had several people reach out to me and ask about other demographics as well as political affiliations. They have absolutely no factor in this. It is nothing more than a math formula. It is literally population in 6 wards as dictated by the Ohio Revised Code to the minimum difference, and our charter defines that as 10%, which is 470, which gives me a range factor of 235 plus or minus. We apply that to the existing wards, and we adjust the block group. So for example, last time there was a block group block that I know Heidi was, when we moved it to make that 10%, she was concerned, so then we did make another move, but then we adjusted in Ward 3 and 4. So the block groups are the small factors we move, but a block group block could have as few as 6, some are actually listed at 0, all the way up to a population of almost 50. So you can't just take any block group. It's not as easy as, well, I want to create wards that have more of this or that. First of all, those are not what we can do under our charter or under the Ohio Revised Code. It literally is population counts.
Are you done, Robin? Anybody else? Roger?
Bridget, when and if changes are made, what's the lead time then in terms of the next election? Or
Well, we will, so now that they have, it's my understanding, these census tracts and block groups, which are those larger aggregate that I'm not moving, but I need to move the smaller pieces within, were done basically as part of some of the redistricting that happens at that state and federal level to get better numbers. So these census tracts and block group should stay the same, which means that next time in 2030, which I better be retired because I cannot do a third ward change. They basically will have the same. Now, the census understands that this is created some changes and challenges. Right. For a community like us, it's a huge factor. Our population is 28,000. For a city like New York, no, it's not a factor because that block group data is probably big enough for them to do whatever kind of ward apportionment they need to do. Right. So it's just a lot more moving smaller pieces when you're dealing with a community our size.
Gwen?
This might be a silly question, Bridget, but this is the first time that I've kind of heard about, going through this process. Do residents ever, do they have an opportunity to weigh in? Are they ever interested in weighing in about whether their ward changes? Is it just something that doesn't even hit their radar? Or?
It's literally a requirement under the Ohio Revised Code, and it is math. It is a math formula. So I suppose if there were residents that were to present and say, I want to stay in Ward 5, don't move me to Ward 4, we would look at that just as when the council representatives 10 years ago raised that they wanted to keep a certain neighborhood that we moved, and then we have to work it because, when you move 10 here, you have to move 10 here and that kind of thing. So if residents were concerned, they could. I can tell you when I did this 10 years ago, I did not have anyone contact me about that, and I actually was in front of council twice on the matter. So, obviously we would, but at this point, there is nothing until we can confirm those. And then basically the process as it's dictated is once we get that, we also then have to do legal descriptions for the boundaries of the wards. So, north on this, to this, and then it lays it out. And what we do is then we take each ward with those new boundaries and we do a single map so everybody understands where their wards are, and then the back data of those block group populations, so that information is available. And so if a resident was concerned that they were being moved from one ward to the other, but it's really just to make sure that each ward has equal representation, that they are representing the same or close to the same amount within 10% of the population. We don't want, for example, a ward that's heavy with density to basically be representing 20 or 30% and another ward not. So this is the way to kind of even it out and make sure that no one ward has population greater or less than the others.
I know that historically residents it hasn't led to confusion or anything when they go to vote or they've got a different ward person. It shouldn't, obviously.
No, yeah, I did not hear anything with the last election at all. And Gary did the 2000, and I actually have that file and was looking at it when I did the 2010. And I did not see any correspondence either from him or residents, and he kept copious notes and pretty dense files, and so I feel if there was something in there, it would have been in there, but I didn't see anything.
Thank you. I was just curious.
Sure.
Thank you
No,
very
it's
much.
a great question.
Okay, John?
Kind of along the same topic, when will this be official, and how does that correlate with the next voting and the next,
This will be official within the beginning part of 2022. So the census count question, the CQR process, which I would, and Heather would feel more comfortable going through just to vet the data that we have analyzed. They begin accepting cases January 3rd, although the gentleman, I was kind of working my way up the chain at the census, and the gentleman said, although that date could be delayed, which is the way it is with almost every new federal program. This is a new initiative, the CQR process, because before, the only tool that was available to a community was an appeal. You appealed to the census. And actually, we did that with our LUCA data, actually, in 2010, and a little bit this time, when they rejected certain addresses, and we go back and forth, but, you know, that was all you could do. And so with this, they're actually saying, hey, wait a minute, we really think that we want this looked at to make sure that those block group blocks that you have listed actually align with that block group and census tract. So it'll just be a good final check. The county's confirmation that we pulled the correct block group blocks was important to Heather and I, but we definitely think the census look at this is important. So I am not sure how long that takes. The Federal Register is silent on how long they can go through that data and how long that process would take. I would hope that it would be something that would be implemented, you know, we would start and hopefully within, you know, 30 to 60 days have a review back, because the other census back and forth we've done has always kind of the transfer has always been fairly quick. So I'm thinking we should be back before you February, March.
Further, John? Robin, one more?
yeah. The reason I brought up the aspect of contiguousness was that did occur back in, I think it was 91 or something. I was running for office. The actual Ward 3 was split at the Cuyahoga River.
Oh.
And you had Middlebury Road aspects over there, and I actually went to some properties, even uptown, that's now, I think, probably Ward 1 or 2. And people actually asked me the question, where are you from? And they said, you're from the South End. What does that have to do with us? Because they, quite frankly, were, you know, they were looking at, you know, you're going to represent people you have no clue about. You're not really associated with our neighborhood. And so they did bring it up. So there was a reason that I brought that up about whether or not properties were that you were going to be contiguous.
I can tell you that natural divisions such as rivers and also right-of-way are not factors in separation of wards. It is strictly block group block boundaries. So just like in zoning where we do not consider like the river or East Main Street, I mean, sometimes those do align with a census tract or a block group. It's just natural to make those breaks because you're going to make them where people aren't living. You don't want to put a census tract or block group line through the middle of someone's home, although it does happen. They do try to align it with major roadways as well as natural features such as a river. But literally the boundaries of the wards are defined by block group blocks. So when the census presents us with those block group blocks, the contiguous is within those block groups. So the Cuyahoga River could split a neighborhood. We could have, 261 split a neighborhood because, for example, you have Maplebrook that was added in this census. So those factors are there, but the contiguous is with regards to block group blocks on the ward boundaries, not natural features.
Okay.
Further? Any other questions? Well, I guess you're gonna be coming back to us then, Bridget, right?
I really
After
do
this-
wish I could have wrapped this up. It was a little disappointing because this is such a major project, and so, but I will say we've made great progress, and we did get clear overlays over a current ward map that has been extremely helpful. And honestly, Heather has really been putting pencil to paper. She's just been really getting at it, and the data she has, when we share it with the census, I think we did a lot of their homework. They just need to verify for us.
I gotta commend you. It's a confusing subject, and I was here when Gary tried to explain to me the first time we were doing this, and I don't think I understand it any more than I did then, so.
Well, I did have to revisit my 2010 because Gary did the first formula setup, so I did have to go back and kind of like and he didn't save it as a spreadsheet. So I was looking at it, and I got to tell you, my first stab at it, I made it a lot harder, and then like I was walking the dog the next morning, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I just need and then I went in, I put it in Excel, and sure enough, that was it. So I made it a little harder on myself. But the hardest part is just making sure that we're counting those right block group blocks in the wards. We really want to make sure that we're aligning those correctly so that they meet within that 10%.
Once again, thank you for your commitment on this.
Sure, no problem.
All right, we're done.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Bridget.
you. Next, we're gonna go, Finance Committee.
Okay, I think, isn't Jim going to come up here and do us some 5-year capital?
Yep, you all got your, it was delivered to your doors one way or another.
I got the wrong one.
Oh, I can share.
You can share.
Last time I forgot.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, that's it. I had sticky notes all over.
So before we go over the capital plan, we're going to give attempt to give a short rundown over what was accomplished this year with the capital work. So, and I promised I'm supposed to be quick with this. I'm going to, but it was a busy year, and so I'm not going to go through everything on there on the slides. If there's something that's on the slides that you have a question about, please let me know, and we'll go ahead and answer that. So, this year started unusually because of COVID in 2020. So that held off 2020 projects that we actually then started bidding at the end of 2020 and early 2021. So the good news for that is we bid out 8 projects before the escalation in prices started happening. And actually during that time period, prices were low. So we actually bid out $8 million worth of work that actually bid out at 15% under that estimate. So that saved us over $1 million on those projects. Now, those projects were prioritized based on outside funding. Okay, we had to use the money up that we were being given by their deadlines. So, and then we progressed those as quickly as we could. We would have liked to have gotten more done, specifically the administration building, but we could only get so much done during that time period. So, moving forward, one of the projects that's not funded through an outside source is the fire station number 2 improvements, but that's been on the books for 3 years now. Probably the major issue to discuss with that is the generator is not going to be delivered till May. The project's going to be done in December, but this is the first of numerous things we're going to talk about as far as supply chain, delivery issues for mechanical equipment that we hear in the news is affecting us as well. So, but the good news is the rest of the project's going to be done and usable by the crews here in December. Another project that's nearing completion is the Portage Bike and Hike Trail, the Brady's Leap segment. It actually, I'm told it's opening on Tuesday, all but the stairs. So the steps, the stairs, the precast stairs were another piece that was delayed because of lack of workers. It was delayed several months due to lack of people able to put it in. Then once it got in, the handrail was delayed being delivered. We're not going to get the handrail until January, and then when the handrail comes in January, if the weather's not like it is today, we're not going to be able to finish coring that in and epoxying that into the rail. The picture on the bottom right is the new overlook, one view looking upstream from the new overlook that's constructed. And the picture on the bottom left is the entrance signs that will be going in. Those actually get delivered tomorrow and should start to be installed tomorrow. So, to our more normal projects, out at Miller, Harvey, and Steele on the northeast part of town, there had been chronic flooding in that area since before I came to the city in 2007, and we're finally able to get it tackled here now. And that project was completed in September, and shortly afterwards there was a rain that typically would have flooded Miller Avenue and potentially flooded a basement, and I was out there and it did exactly what it was supposed to do, and those people have much less risk now than they had before. So, but as you can see with the bottom left of the photo, even though we're doing stormwater, storm sewers, and water main, Steele Street actually got basically a full street pavement redone. During this, Steele Street was in bad condition, so sidewalks, curbs, and new pavement was done at the same time. So, which leads us to the next few projects, which represent a high priority area that we hear from the residents and from council, and it has to do with streets and sidewalks. And we've talked about this project in the past, North Water Street. This project, while it's a safety project that's predominantly funded by ODOT, really in its base core resurfaces the street, realigns the sidewalks, and we do add street lighting and new marked crosswalks in that area. That project was finished in October. The trees are supposed to be started planted later this week. We've been pushing for that for the last 2 or 3 weeks, so I can't guarantee anything, but the last we've heard they're going to be starting here later this week. Now, the safety improvement for this project was primarily driven by reducing vehicular speeds. Okay, we received many complaints prior to working on the job that people were driving fast through that area. We took speed data, and it was true that they were. So we've now taken speed data after the job's been done, and it has done what we hoped it would do, specifically the number of people driving 20 miles per hour or less. Prior to the job being done, only around 13% of cars were going less than 20 miles per hour. After the job was done, that percentage tripled. And just to give you some idea, South Water Street on the other side of Maine has typically around 35 to 40% of cars driving under 20 miles per hour. Sort of a reflection of the fact that it's a walkable area with pedestrians and bicyclists and other modes of transportation, and you're expecting people to stop, pull in to a parking spot, back out, those kind of things. So, moving forward, the next
Chairman,
John, you have a question?
Yeah, that little caution sign at the end of Portage Street that gets knocked over every day and then disappears for a while and comes back. Is there any solutions for that?
So that's a great question.
Don't talk on your phone when you're driving.
So that sign, studies have shown that those signs have the most impact to reducing speeds. At that location there, when it first went up, it did fine for a little while. Then school started, and buses turning out of Portage can't make that turn and not hit the sign. So after we sort of knew it was coming, we took the sign away. We talked to the principal at St. Pat's and asked them, look, we'll give you the sign. Can you guys put it out before the buses come in at the end of the day? Well, remove it when the buses come in at the end of the day, put it back. They said they would do that, but it doesn't seem to have operationalized very well. So
Sitting in the flower bed over there.
well, actually, that's a different one, because the one that was up there is actually in our garage in pieces. So we're still trying to find some way to help slow cars down going through that area.
Would it be as effective if you had 2 of them and they were a little farther away from the intersection?
So then the studies that have shown that they're most effective when you have one in the center of the road and one on each side. And those signs specifically are said that they cannot be mounted on the side of the road. You're supposed to put them on the center line or on a lane line in the pavement. They have other signs that get mounted on the side of the road. So we're talking about things like maybe painting the curbs so that they stands out a little bit more, or people have mentioned tabletops, but we don't want to do a tabletop in this kind of a high traffic area and plowed area. So, but we're also just looking at traffic crashes. If crashes reduce like we hope and the speeds stay down without it, then we will move forward without it. Maybe we just put it up when school's not in session in the summer. So we're still trying to find a good way to incorporate that. So it's finding a balance between all those needs in that area. Thank you. Great question. So moving on Walnut Street, this project is part of a long-term program that started when Bridget came and I came in 07, 08, 09. Down in the south end, streets that have been done with this, CDBG funding, Pine, Cedar. This is the first block of Walnut. It's part of the focus on neighborhoods and maintaining those infrastructure in those neighborhoods. The one issue that we had with this one, with this project, was prior to the work being done, there was illegal parking for an apartment complex in the right-of-way. You see it quite a bit in some of the older neighborhoods, but since we were completely redoing the street, we had to find a solution that didn't completely rule out trying to service that area, but also not providing sole parking for one entity in the right-of-way. So what was done, which is different than most streets, it actually has, and you see it to the right, it actually bumps out, and those will be striped parking spots in the residential area. So you see that on School Street by Holden, and so there's a couple areas that it does that, but this seemed like the best solution for that area, because just to the left there is an apartment complex that doesn't have any parking on the private property. So this is public parking. It's not provided just for those residents. So far, we haven't heard of any complaints since that's moved forward. The concern, though, is going to be with the winter time moving forward. So. Then leading to the next project dealing with streets and sidewalks would be our annual street and sidewalk program, which has many projects that get built as part of it. The first one on Harris Street in that same area, it's like Dodge, which was done recently. This is funded by Ohio Public Works Commission, and it's a very long stretch of road. It's about a half a mile. And it's got new pavement, all the curbs, all the sidewalks are being done. So just like in this one project alone, we basically fixed a mile's worth of sidewalk. And in this neighborhood, there's a couple areas where there's gaps and no sidewalks. You see sidewalks and then nothing, then another sidewalk. So those gaps were filled in improving that neighborhood. So now this next one is not a slide I prefer to show. The pictures I prefer to show are finished streets. But due to the strange start to the year, we bid the work for this annual Sweet Street program with the asphalt work, but we were not able to get it started construction. So the contract's awarded, and it's going to begin in the spring of next year. And you can see the streets that we're working on up there. A lot of residential streets, Alley 2 in downtown, and then when we say pavement repairs, that's a significant amount. Usually 25 to 30% of the street gets removed and replaced with asphalt before we end up chip sealing those streets the year after. So. Also, when we do the street and sidewalk program, there are streets, we typically pair up the sidewalk work when we pave the streets, but there's always streets that don't get asphalt, and so we do those sidewalks separately. And this year we finished Needham Avenue up on the north end of town, Earl, just near downtown west side of South Manaway, and then Kevin was a concrete street on the northwest part of town. We repaired sidewalks as well as fixing sections of the concrete street. Now we're going to see Kevin several years in a row because it's expensive to fix concrete streets. They're great because they last a while, but if the concrete's failing, they're not so great because it's really hard to fix, and very expensive to fix. But in total, if you look at Harris, Walnut, the paving program that was bid, the concrete work, those total $1.9 million that was done in streets and sidewalks. If you add North Water Street into that, that pushes that number to $3.3 million. So try to keep that focus on that infrastructure that we're hearing from the residents, and from my understanding, you're hearing from the residents, that's what they want us to spend our resources on. Now, the next couple projects is the other priority going on right now and for the near future. This one, unfortunately, is not one that is driven by what the public wants. It's sort of forced on us by age. Things, as we've talked last year and the year before, and we'll be talking over the next several years about work at the water reclamation facility and the pump stations. This project is the completion of the emergency rehabilitation of primary clarifier number 2. There's 2 primary clarifiers. We have one that typically works, and then the other is a backup. For the last several years, we've run without a backup. Now we thankfully have one again. That's now functioning and running. And this work had to be done when a couple of mechanical safeguards failed and ended up damaging the equipment beyond repair. So, and to the tune of $500,000 to rehab that piece of equipment. Yes, I have a question.
Oh, I didn't see you.
Yeah, maybe this is a discussion for another day, but is this flood-proof? Because we've been seeing a lot of issues in other communities with flooding of the water sewage treatment.
This is, our plant's out of the flood zone.
Even though it's by the river.
Even though it's by the river, correct. Mm-hmm.
So even 100-year flood?
That's the standard that's looked at, yes.
Every 10 years now.
Sometimes it feels that way, yes. Yeah, and the 100-year flood changes over time as more data gets collected. So, but the current maps that show the current flood limits, ours is outside of those flood limits. So, that's a great question. So, moving on, so the rehab of the number 1 clarifier is actually in the capital plan in one of the out years, as that work will need to be done in the near future. So the next project is another project that's actually been on the capital plan since I've been here for 14 years now. I'm happy to say it's finally under construction. This is the replacement of pump stations in the southwest part of town. This project includes eliminating a pump station in Yakavona Park and then building a new sewer from that pump station down Middlebury Road to the pump station on Middlebury Road, down by the boat ramp to enter into the river. And that pump station is being replaced and enlarged so that it can handle all the flow, because in a long-term life cycle cost, operating one pump station is cheaper than in a sewer than it is to operate 2 pump stations and less sewer. This project was funded from DEFA, the Department of Environmental Financial Assistance, as a loan for 100% that you guys saw and approved earlier this year, and we saw and approved 2 years prior. This project started construction in October. Middlebury Road is closed because of this, and it's because that the sewer is 15 feet deep. It's actually down by the river level. So we have to dewater the trench to go ahead and build the sewer through there. So this project was also delayed because of delivery issues. The actual pumps for the pump station were delayed 6 months. And as soon as they got awarded the project, they went to order the pumps, but then found out we couldn't get them until later on in early 2022. So the project would have started probably 3 months ago. However, because the pumps wouldn't have been done, we couldn't have built it and then just leave it not functioning. So the contractor chose to wait. Excuse me. The contractor chose to wait and start the project when they know they can have it ready when the pumps come in. So, yes.
Jim, is the reason that you didn't put the sewer line in the first place, went to pump station because of the depth?
Well, that was in 1950-something. I assume so, is the answer, yes. I assume that they didn't. Or, the other thing could be, John, they were built at different time periods with those subdivisions when those streets were done. So one could have been done when Yakavona area was done, and it served that area, and then another project subdivision was done, then Middlebury, and that one could be done then. That's the other likely possibility. Good question there. So the road, Middlebury Road will be closed through February to allow for the construction of that sewer to be completed into there. And it's going to take a while simply because winter weather, as well as it being a really deep sewer. So that leads us to sort of talking about where we sit. We saw this table last year without the two columns to the right. I'm happy to say that we're in a much better position this year than we thought we would be last year. Okay? And that's because of a couple of things. First off, the 5 measures we put into place at the end of last year, thanks to your approval, has made a difference. There's more money available for us to use to get the sewer work done. The other thing that has happened, we've been successful twice now to get OPWC money for the final clarifiers. And then the use of ARPA funds to fund sewer work has been an unexpected boon to help keep money basically in the ratepayers' pockets so that this work can get done. So currently, the Southwest Pump Station is under construction. The final clarifiers as proposed in the capital plan, there's two phases of that, and it's proposed to be funded through 2 OPWC grants that we've received, a state ARPA grant that we just found out that we received to the tune of $1.39 million, and then using city local ARPA funds to cover the rest. So with those 2 projects being funded, that's $7.2 million, which is 50% of that $14.4 million that we're trying to get through over the next 5 to 10 years.
What does ARPA mean?
American Recovery Plan. Thank you. American Rescue Plan Act.
Okay. I was just,
I
never heard that.
Yeah, that's the fund associated with COVID relief. So the next big need is the heat digesters, which has been postponed for probably 5 years running now because of the $4.9 million price tag. However, if we can use the local ARPA funds and we're successful in submitting for OPWC, which we would submit for next year, that looks like that could be funded in 2023, which then that gets us through 85% of that $14 million. However, let's put caution to all of this. That last item that says to be determined, the headworks renovation, is closer to the numbers at the top than it is the numbers at the bottom. In other words, it's in the millions, not in the less than $1 million to do. We don't have the number yet. We plan on a study is being done now to determine the costs and how the work would be done at the plant, and we expect to have that next year. So.
Go ahead.
Yeah, is it state-of-the-art, when we do these projects, are these state-of-the-art, and are they energy efficient? Are we taking into account, like, maybe some changes in the way that we are going to be preserving the environment going forward with global warming, et cetera?
Sure. So these projects specifically, so let's first off talk about the whole purpose of the water reclamation facility is the protection of the environment. It keeps us from polluting the river. That's its whole sole purpose. And to the credit of those people who run the plant, we do not get violations. We've been doing the work that we need to be doing to make this happen. Now, the projects with the clarifiers and the digesters, those are just rehabilitations. They are not complete replacements. Complete replacements, we're lucky to be in a city where our plant has the capacity to deal with the flow that has coming to it. Otherwise, this price tag's now $14 million. It's double that or more. So, like with the primary clarifier that you saw, the work that's done is basically taking out all the mechanical equipment and putting in new mechanical equipment that does the same thing as the existing. The power supplies to it, none of that's changing. Okay, if it's more efficient mechanical equipment out there, which I assume, that's what's being used, but these are motors, not energy producing. It's not like LED lights or compared to high pressure sodium or things like that. So,
Yeah, I just want to do a follow-up.
sure.
Are we recapturing methane?
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's what the heat digesters does.
Okay.
To the best of our abilities, right? And we need to replace those so that we can continue doing that.
Okay,
Mhm.
so basically, yes.
Mhm.
And I remember touring that plant, there was a flame? that
Yes,
was
that's
internally burning?
yes, that's at the heat digesters, right?
That's the heat
Mm,
digester?
yes. Mhm.
Will we still have that flame burn off? Or
Yep.
do we-
Mhm. I believe so. Do you have any more information on that? Since you've been in on those.
People want to know, because I give tours
Mhm.
of this plant periodically, and that is an area of concern.
Sure. So we reuse, we try and capture the methane to reuse it for the heating process of the digesters. If there's excess or not enough produced, if there's excess, you'll see the flame. If there's not enough produced, we have to augment with natural gas. For the most part, it's able to sustain most of that function, but when you see it, it's because there's too much. So it depends on the rate and the flow that we're cleaning or clarifying the sludge.
Okay, that we're not putting the methane out into the environment?
I don't believe so. I don't believe that's how it works.
That's why the flame's there, to burn
I
it
was going
off.
to say, that's why it's there, so it's burning it off.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
How would adding an extra 1,000 people to the city affect it?
Well, that's not the time, that's not the time for that. We're in a committee meeting. You know, I'll go to the audience at a certain time. I'll get you when we go there, okay? Robin?
Yeah, what was the formulation of ARPA that created this pot of money?
That I don't have an answer for you, Robin. I'm sorry. Any answer I would give would probably be wrong. So, we just know what we were given through the feds.
We'll pay it back one day.
Robin, the ARPA limited utilities to the water and sewer.
As well.
It couldn't be for infrastructure other than water and sewer, but that was something they built into it to also improve job opportunities.
So, in looking, well, okay.
Okay. So, the good news is that we're in a much better position than we thought we were going to be last year. It's not fully through the area, but we've got at least half of the need funded, and hopefully if things go well next year, we'll have another 30-some% of those needs identified funded. So then we can go back to dealing with the normal capital work and the sewer fund that we would typically have that's being postponed because this work is taking priority. So as we try, as we discussed last year, to keep the money in the pockets of the ratepayers and the citizens to pay the sewer fees. So I always have one slide showing some of the miscellaneous stuff that we do, some of the small things that, you know, while they're small, they still sometimes have a big impact on the community. This year, the 3 projects shown up there, we had help from the community on all 3 projects. The first one, if you've been out to West Main Street before this side path or 8-foot wide sidewalk was built, there was no sidewalk there before. I mean, I have to give all the credit in the world to Claiborne for coming to us when they were going to do their parking lot and say, hey, what can be done to actually put a sidewalk in place there? And thanks to your help, we put together an agreement and a project that would help get an 8-foot side path in there. They donated the land for it, and then they ended up managing the project and running it. So that was great. So now the people from the Lakes of Franklin Mills who have a bike trail that comes down to Main Street can now get to Main Street, can get to Main Street where the bike lanes are. So they come to West Main Street and the piece of Main Street that's next to Haymaker. So that was an important connection that there was an opportunity to have done, and it was great to work with them on that. The other two, with the Chimney Swift Tower and the Hammock Park, we had people donating money, flowers, plants, high school students coming out doing work, planning stuff. It was fun and exciting for my staff who were working on that, and I'll be honest, in the time period I've been here, I've never received more comments on any project than the Chimney Swift Tower. That one, we received the most input from the public, so that was exciting. So, looking at next year, that leads into Rhonda talking about the capital plan. We have, besides the administration building, which you heard about last month, starting construction here early next year, we still have the same two primary focus: streets, sidewalks. Those are the projects in green at the top. Besides our typical street and sidewalk program, which is fully funded in the capital plan, ODOT's going to be resurfacing State Route 43 on the north end of town from Stenap Street north. We're going to be resurfacing Middlebury Road with a grant we got from the state after the pump station's done, which has sort of been what's been holding that up. And then last year we were able to secure a grant for emergency resurfacing from AMATS to pave Main Street and South Water Street downtown, and that'll be done next year. Those four projects total, again, $3.3 million being put into the streets and sidewalks next year. Then you see the three projects in blue. Those are all related to the water reclamation facility and the pump station. So finishing the pump station next year, starting phase one of the clarifiers, and then which should be bid in January, and then doing the next phase at the end of the year once we get the funding from the state, which comes in August of next year. So, and then we'll still be working on East Main Street. We'll be working on East Main Street design and right-of-way acquisition for the next 3 years. So that is it.
10 minutes?
Yeah. She told me 4. So, thank you.
Absolutely, thanks. So you all have your books.
Yep.
I think you've seen these every single year for a number of years. The way they work, we've got the 5-year capital improvement plan discussion at the very beginning. And then for each year, for the 5 years, 2021 through 2026, we have detailed out all the different projects that were done in 2021, that were budgeted in 2021, and then what is anticipated for 2022. Again, what I've done this year is I've, on page 3 of 2021 and then the final page of each year, I kind of highlighted the net cost to the city and just showed you how it's been allocated out to the different funds. Not sure if you have any questions on the detailed pages, because after each of the years, then you have multiple pages of detail as to what the projects are and what money is going to be spent for each of the years, 2021 through 2026. I think the biggest discussion is really going to be on the analysis of the funds, which is in the latter, pretty much it's the last 4 pages of the book itself. So for the water fund, I don't know if you want to go to the water fund, but in the water fund, you'll notice that the beginning balance for 2022 is $2.7 million. This is up because there were projects that were deferred because of COVID and potentially because of lack of funding. So we postponed them, and that's why there's such a large amount to start 2022 with. And then, as Jim said, we've got many projects that are going to be starting here in the upcoming year. And then at the bottom of that page, you'll notice, too, that the fund balance for the water fund out to 2024 is in okay to decent shape. It doesn't go negative until the final 2026 year. But we will be definitely watching this, and if we don't have the funds to work on any of the projects, they will definitely have to get deferred until the funding is available. And then also the 9% increases that council had approved for, a few years back, that's also helped in maintaining these balances to where they are now. So for the sewer fund, we don't start 2022 with as high a balance because we have the clarifiers that are somewhat budgeted in this fund, but we took them out of this fund and put them into the ARPA fund. That's the American Rescue Plan Act. We haven't budgeted all these projects yet, but you'll see in the 2022 budget in next month's meeting that you'll see those budgeted in that book. The 3% increases that have been in the sewer fund, they've helped, but they are probably not going to be enough. We're just going to have to maintain and watch what funds are available for future projects. In 2023, as Jim alluded, we have the heat digester project that's towards the bottom of 2023 of $6.9 million. That is in there because it needs to be done. But again, if it's going to be funded with ARPA money, it'll come out of this fund. And any money that has to be paid out of this fund will stay here. We just haven't determined if we're going to use the local and potentially any state ARPA funds for this project completely or not. For the stormwater project, there's really not a lot going on in this one. The fund balance did increase at the beginning of 2022. Really, in 2021, the only major project that we had was the Miller Harvey Steel project, and the fund balance actually dipped in 2021 because it was encumbered in 2020, but it was actually done in 2021. And so that was pretty much the only project that we did in this fund for this year. And then we come to the largest fund. This is the capital plan. This encompasses the general fund, the street construction maintenance and repair fund, income tax safety fund, fire and EMS, and the capital projects fund. So we combined all of this in here to show you what money is available. You'll notice in 2021 that the expenditures or the expenses of $20,471,000 are higher in 2021 as compared to 2020, and that's because council allowed us to allocate a portion of the engineering staff's salaries to the capital fund so that it alleviated dollars away from water sewer and allowed us to spend money in there for needed projects. So thank you for that. But however, by allocating the money here, then it reduces how much can be actually spent on capital projects in this fund. Just to, as Jim was mentioning all these different projects that we have, what we do with these pages is we include all of the projects that the city and all the different departments feel are necessary to keep us working and maintaining all the equipment that we have. The only problem is once we get to the year that we're budgeting, we can only budget for what we have money to do. So if we don't have other outside source revenue, and this year we happen to get very lucky with the ARPA money from the federal government, it actually came from the U.S. Department of Treasury, that's allowing us to do projects that we didn't anticipate being able to do at this point.
Heidi, you have a question?
Yeah, so this capital plan in and of itself, do you think it helps position us to attract the infrastructure bill funds that may be trickling down in the next couple of years?
The fact that we are so prepared and know what we want to do for the next 5 years, I do think it is. The engineering department, they're very good at attracting the grants.
Yeah, if I can even add on to that. I mean, you all are veterans of this process, so you kind of know the drill, but really the main year of focus is the next year And that's why you'll often see some reds and maybe some yellows in the out years. But really, I've, worked in three cities now, and this is arguably the most sophisticated 5-year capital plan. I don't say that to toot our horn. I say it more to say I think it's a reflection of the fact that we're not a quote-unquote wealthy community, but we do an amazing amount of work. And that's because we can be, a plan like this really lets you get strategic, and you see it from year to year. Remember last year we were sitting here telling you sewer fund is going to be a bust. Well, because we had a path and we knew where our funds are going to be, when we saw opportunities, to your point, Heidi, when there were some new opportunities for funding, Jim could start shifting and working with Rhonda, and it's like the system works as a system. So he knows that he can do this here, move that there, whereas if we didn't have some document like this, it's almost like a wing and a prayer, right? And you're much less efficient, you're much less productive with your grantsmanship. And it's really, those two represent their respective departments, but this is a really, really good capital plan, and it's a really good exercise in management and strategic planning all coming together in one spot. So I know I didn't get to say any lead-in, but that would have been my lead-in.
So I would add too, that's why you see so many changes each year as we adjust and adapt to those opportunities that come into play, and we fit those in the plan. And just so you know, we are tracking where that new infrastructure bill's money's coming to. We have ideas. We have documentation showing which areas they're focusing in, and some fits us really well, and some doesn't fit us really well. So like they're increasing bridge funding 400%. We don't have any bad bridges. Okay? So we won't be eligible for that, but that's okay. There's other ones that they do our funding increases on. The safety program, we've been fairly successful in that in the past, so we'll continue to look at that. So just letting you know.
Thank you. Yeah, who implemented this capital plan, do you know?
I mean, the whole thing, right?
Yeah, when did it get started? I mean, do you know which city manager did it, or mayor, or, I mean, who had the
I don't
genius
know.
to
Has
see
this
to do
been,
that?
Jim did it.
I know I'm old, but I'm not that old.
How long we've been doing it? Been doing it ever since.
Since John Lehman was,
John Lehman?
yeah. Used to be, there was none. When the fire department wanted a truck, they just gave us a bill, and there was no planning to pay that bill. John Lehman,
Was he as mayor?
pardon?
Finance director, right?
Finance director before Barb Rislin.
Oh.
Oh, you got a piece of history, guys.
Back in the 1880s?
1880s?
Back in the 80s?
Is that when the charter test came in to?
75 was the charter test.
John, John probably knows it.
Vacant in 1983.
Further questions, or do you have any more?
No, that's pretty much it. It's just been a very collaborative effort by all the departments, and I thank Jim for doing as much work as he's done on this, as all the other departments as well.
Further questions from council? Robin, did you have another question? I was going to go.
Yeah, kinda.
A minute.
Talk about history. I'm trying to figure out if in fact we've worn, and I don't know how we fill the gaps, if in fact we had not had COVID, we had not gotten extra funding to kind of fill in gaps, where do you think we'd be now?
Not doing the heat digester project. We probably would either have to raise rates to the residents and get debt.
Well, we even said, remember in our presentation last year, we can't rate our way out of
Right.
this. It was such a big gap, Rob. You saw his 14 million we got to come up with. You could triple, quadruple, 10 times the rates, and you're not going to make up that cash. So it would have taken really, we were starting that process, and some of the, as Jim mentioned, some of the internal mechanisms, cost accounting changes that we could justify and implement to start to relieve the sewer fund, those were working. But yeah, I don't want to think about you know, where we would have been. If there's a silver lining, it's been this injection of cash and us being ready and opportunistic enough to be able to take advantage of it.
Further from council? Now, did you get your answer from Jim?
Yes, I did.
Okay, I was gonna go back to you. I'm sorry I did that way, but we were, you know, okay.
Got to follow.
So what do we need here? Do we need to approve this 5-year?
You need a motion?
You need a motion?
I'll move that we accept the plan as presented.
I'll second that.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Okay, committee meetings are adjourned. Board of Control. If anybody wants to talk to council on their public communications, you must sign in with the clerk.
If anyone's speaking, please
We
come
do
sign
have
in.
board control. Where's my pack?
It's in there. It's the last.
There should be, I thought she said one item tonight. That's it, there it is. So it's the minutes from
Hello.
November 3rd.
Nice to meet you.
Okay,
Yeah.
November 3rd minutes.
Just go ahead and write your name, address, and phone number.
Second, all in favor? Yes. Aye, opposed? We have one
First
item.
on the list, I'll call your name. Just approach the microphone.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. I know, it was.
I think that's what we were saying, yeah.
Thanks,
Well,
Mike.
it depends. Someone may make a motion, but I don't know who's going to vote.
We'll give a couple minutes before we start council meeting. Anybody wants to talk to council on the public communication, you must sign in with the clerk. Be recognized. Meeting of November the 17th, 2021. Would the clerk please read the roll?
Mr. De Leon?
Here.
Mr. Ferrara?
Here.
Mr. Kuhar?
Here.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Here.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish? Here. Mr. Sidoti?
Here.
Mr. Turner?
Here.
And Ms. Wallach?
Here.
Mr. Amrine called in, he asked to be excused. Gonna need a motion.
So excused.
John, who seconded it?
Heidi.
Heidi. Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Opening remarks and pledge by Ms. Rosenberg.
I don't have any open remarks, other than I hope everyone has a wonderful and happy Thanksgiving Turkey Day. So gobble gobble, let's stand.
Flag move.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we get started, Ms. Wallach had a request at our last council meeting about posting an agenda. After doing a little research, putting a word out, and had some staff looking for it, Gary Bishop finally came up with our old one. It's on here on the door. And my recollection is the last time we seen it is at our last council meeting in our council chambers on May 6, 2015.
Yeah.
So, thank you, Tracy, for bringing that to our attention.
Okay, yeah.
All right, I need approval of minutes from October 20th. Is there a second?
Oh, that didn't work.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion?
I was trying to school her through that, because she was gonna do it, but that's all
Somebody
right.
else did my homework.
That's all right.
All right, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I need a motion for the special council meeting.
Abstain.
One abstention.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Mr. Sidoti. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. One abstention. Communications, public communications. Amy, would you read the name?
Mr. John Thomas. You're up.
I need to read this. While the law does not require council to provide time for the public comments, we have historically invited the public to make comments, and we appreciate their input. This is their time when residents and others can comment on matters that concern them. However, we will not engage in any debate, or, as President Council, I reserve the right to end any public comments that are destructive, embarrassing, harassment, or otherwise objectionable. We ask that you come to the podium, speak into the mic, give your name and your address for the minutes, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Mr. Thomas.
John Thomas, 1621 Chadwick Drive, Kent. And I'm here along with a few other folks from the southeast Kent neighborhood that comprises approximately 14 streets. And it was bordered by Chadwick on the east, South Lincoln, South Water on the west, Malloy Road on the south, and probably School Street on the north. And what I'm here to address briefly is the concept that's been discussed called an intergenerational village. We were notified about this a few weeks back. The university hosted a meeting at the rec center on October 27th that was attended by approximately 25 to 30 individuals. We ourselves held a neighborhood meeting last Thursday in this room, and part of the product of that meeting is the list you see there. What I'm here to address at this point of the concept of the redevelopment of the general area where the Allerton Married Students Apartments are, is that there has been, as some of us know now, more of us, a city-university committee. I believe the city's representatives are the city manager, the community development director, and possibly one other administrator. I'm not aware of the representation from the university. I know their side, and I don't like to use the word side, it sounds adversarial at this point, is headed up by Vice President Doug Pearson, who's the Director of Facilities and whatever else the title says. There's no engagement on the city side of this committee at this point from elected representatives. I think we would like to see that as a community/neighborhood. And quite frankly, since we're neighbors with the university, and they're part of this community, and I've always thought them to be, I think they made a serious left step out of the box by not including elected representatives, certainly at least one of the council at-large representatives, the ward representative, Mr. Turner, who's been very helpful at this early point of this discussion, and quite frankly, the university needs the input, and the neighborhood needs to have representation on that city-university community. We want to be a good neighbor of the university. In fact, my property abuts the university property, or I should say, public land owned by us under the stewardship of the Board of Trustees of Kent State. This is public land. This is not private land for development. And I think the council has a moral obligation to make sure 1, 2, or 3 of its own elected representatives are added to this city university committee, and further, that neighbors who are neighbors of the university also be added to this committee as early as possible. From what I understand from the current timeline, the Board of Trustees will act tentatively at their March meeting to award a intent to proceed with one of the 3 submittees. And that's not that far away, at least from us neighbors on the other side of the proverbial fence. We just need more engagement. We're not talking now about being adversarial. We're talking about being included in this. This is going to be, if it goes from concept to actuality, and I've had experience with things like this. One was over 30 years ago, and Jerry is the other person that had experience in this council with this, called the DeBartolo Mall, also known as University Town Center Mall. I was humbled by that process, and it opened my eyes, and I saw at times how I was wrong with some of the decisions that were made along the way. And we have basically within this part of the community the same type of potential. And I always thought if the council and the administration in the mid to late 80s had engaged the community earlier and made them an inclusive part of the discussion, it might have come out somewhat differently, regardless of where you stood at any point in time. So what I'm asking here is not a demand. It's a request that you get more engaged with this potential development. I know, having discussed with coordinator or with Director Suzel, there's not even schematics. And these 3 proposals are being put together now. But I also know, sometimes you can have the 2-minute egg, and you can leapfrog from concept to, well, here we are. And I don't think we want a runaway train. I think we want to be put on the train to go along for the ride and to collaborate. That's what it's all about. We're collaborating and communicating here. And I think the university realizes at this point early on the error of their omission by beginning off the launch pad without some key players and agents on their committee. I apologize for going over 3 minutes,
I let you.
Council President, and I thank you, and I appreciate. And I might add that the last time City Manager Roller and I talked, he helped me out back in June of 2013. He helped our neighborhood out of an issue, and Jerry might recall that too. And what I recall you saying, Mr. Roller, to me on the phone, that you had driven at that point in time in June of 13 through our neighborhood, and I can't say exactly what adjectives you used, but you were impressed by our neighborhood. And I don't want to go away from the mic without saying, I am on the PMHA board. Everyone is entitled to live and have a roof over their heads. They have a right to that, regardless of whether it's top shelf, middle shelf, or bottom shelf abode. I just want to see some logic and inclusion put into the development of whatever's about to unfold. And I thank you for your attention.
Thank you. If any of you have written your concerns written, the clerk would take them for the minutes accuracy. Next.
Mr. Eric Nichols.
Name and address, and we'll try and limit it to 3, I understand.
Sure, yeah. My name's Eric Nichols. I live at 1560 Chadwick. It's at the end of the cul-de-sac, sort of butting up against where Allerton Road and the property meet. I agree with John on every one of the points that he made about looking for some more discussion on this. It seems to be moving pretty quick. I know our neighborhood was notified approximately 23 hours before the meeting with a slip in the door. My kids let me know that somebody dropped something off. It was about 6 o'clock in the evening. So it definitely feels like a left hook, and it looks and smells and seems as a for-profit scheme with private developers. We're talking about private land. I do think that there's a better approach if we're going to build a 1,000 people apartment complex, in terms of that should probably be sold if it's possible, the land. The developer should take that to the zoning committee. This should be voted on. A full study should be done in the costs. Allerton Road is like driving on the moon as it is. There's a lot of things that haven't been considered. I've heard that this is part of the city's master plan, but there's also a large apartment complex going in down at the corner on Water Street and 261, which also has us concerned about the neighborhood. And when you look at the absolute sprawl of people that you're looking at when you put 2 apartment complexes in, Kent State seems to just be going about it. Look how pretty our drawings are. Let's move forward with this project. Doesn't seem to work so well when the city of Kent, the police, the fire, the water, the sewer, the electric, and everything is affected. So long story short, it doesn't affect just me or my neighbors or John or Wendy or anybody. It affects you, and you, and every single person that lives around here very deeply for a long time. Very concerned about what it's going to take once these 1,000 people move in. How much are we going to have to raise for schools? How can they find enough teachers to accommodate that? Lots and lots of concerns that go beyond whether the structure fits the building code, whether it's a good idea that's part of some master plan somewhere. But we definitely beg for more discussion as a community with your representation as our elected city council to make a decision on this that is right for the city of Kent. We understand and recognize that Kent State is an integral part of the city, but I will also challenge you that there is hundreds of thousands of cities in this country that do not have a university that are able to function just fine. And I do think that the city of Kent needs to look at the independence of the city versus the university and how this all works together. I know that there's a battle right now about a t-shirt shop, whether or not they're allowed to have Kent State colors because Kent has its own identity. But in the meantime, Kent State can go and put in a 1,000-person apartment complex, and the city has nothing to say about that. I think it's laughable, and I think we need to focus our efforts on what really matters here. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Wendy Uzick?
Hello, my name is Wendy Uzick. I live at 1583 Chadwick. I attended the meeting at Kent State. I attended the meeting at Kent State Wellness Center for the Intergenerational Village, and kind of sat there in awe. Most of the questions were not answered. The concerned citizens presented questions, and the answers were basically, we don't know, we don't know. And I kind of walked away from there really concerned, and I decided to pass out some flyers and see which neighbors are interested. 32 people showed up, and my phone hasn't stopped ringing since. In the 1-hour meeting that we had on November 11th, 40 points came up. Everything from traffic and lighting to noise to schools to environmental concerns, the woods, to the south, I think, of the Allerton, the old Allerton, is it to the south? The ones that run behind Chadwick area. We also showed some aerial pictures that showed from the 1950s, the town of Kent, when it was all farmland. And in those aerial pictures, you could clearly see that that forest was intact. When Kent State was asked about that forest, they said it will be up to the developer. And their attitude kind of came across to me as if they were going to wash their hands, and whatever the developer decides is what they would do. Those are very mature trees. It's not your normal little backyard woods. I think that it should be taken into consideration. There are wetlands, there are all sorts of species and trees that are hundreds of years old in that area, and it should be up to the developer. For me, that's not an answer. I think that the community needs to be taken into consideration, and I'm here to ask for representation from our elected officials, because you guys are important to us, and we hope that we're important to you, because we are the intergenerational village, the original one. We're homeowners. We are people. I'm on my 5th child that is going to Kent State. People that not only work for Kent State or are previously employed by Kent State or have kids. So the term intergenerational village actually represents what we have in our community that we share with that area that they're talking about developing, and it affects us. It really does affect us. So if you have some time to maybe look at some of the issues that were written up on the board, I would really appreciate it. And I would like to see some of Kent people on the steering committee and some of these questions addressed, because 32 people came out, and another, dozen phone calls since then, and my phone hasn't stopped. So they had 20 people, and we have concerned citizens. So thank you for your time. I hope I haven't gone over 3 minutes, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
No one else has signed in.
Okay, written communications.
The Standing Rock Cemetery October meeting minutes and agenda for November 11th were received on November 5th, 2021. The Planning Commission agenda and staff report for the November 16th, 2021 meeting was received on November 9th. Communication received after the agenda was published. I received the Parks and Recreation November board packet on November 12th. The Civil Service Commission meeting agenda for November 15th was received on November 12th. A letter from Frank LaRose, the Ohio Secretary of State, thanking City Council for sharing the minutes from Democracy Day was received and forwarded to Council today, November 17th. And a request for the updated list of city officials was received from the Ohio Ethics Commission today as well.
Okay, thank you. City Manager report, Mr. Ferrero.
I move to approve items 1 through 7, please.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same. Mr. Roller, you have anything further?
No, not really, Mr. Mayor, but since this is up and I have a few minutes, I did want to just report that Mr. Turner did call me today, and we had about an hour, right, trying to line up a lot of the comments that you all have shared tonight as well. And I already had talked to Kent State after I talked to him. I do feel like there's opportunities. I don't think they're intending this to be adversarial either. So more to follow, I hope. So I told Robin we'll continue to have conversations with them. They were gracious enough to, this is the first time I can remember that they've ever invited any city staff even on a project committee that they're doing. I think there's something like 15 different members of this quote-unquote committee, and they were gracious enough to invite Bridget and I to at least represent. Hopefully, I want to look at that list, because I know we spent a lot of time talking about quality of life in the neighborhood, traffic in the neighborhood, environmental issues in the neighborhood. stormwater. I didn't talk about schools. I don't remember talking about that one, but, so I didn't want you to walk out here thinking that we were not doing something in that same vein. And I know from my perspective in participating in the process so far, I found them to be very interested in engagement. So, you know, we had Dana here last month, and she, from Kent State, and she stood at the microphone, talked about the intergenerational village. I don't think they're hiding from it. And if there's been some miscues, I'm optimistic that they'll work with everybody. I mean, I can't make promises, but please know that as soon as he said it to me, I called, and they responded, and we had a conversation. We have a meeting tomorrow. So we'll do what we can, please know that, and we'll keep working on this. And hopefully, because you say I like John's metaphor, get on board the same train. So it's early yet to know, but I do appreciate, and Robin said the same thing, that time goes fast and we don't want to wait longer. It's better to be too early than too late, right? So that would be my sort of few comments. Not prepared, but based on the comments tonight, I thought it might be worth everybody hearing some of that.
Okay. Can I ask, is there a hard copy what's on this board someplace?
I'll take a picture.
I took a picture.
We'll get one made, and we'll take a photo.
Well, sooner or later, the fire department's going to want to use that board. So, if somebody can come up with a hard copy or something, it would be great.
Well, we'll take a photo of it, and then we'll just type it up.
All right, thank you.
That's all.
All right, getting to standing committees, first thing, committee of the whole, I need a motion of the minutes of November the 3rd.
So moved. Second.
Roger made the motion, Mike second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I need a motion for that action recommendation.
So moved.
Second. Mike, Robin. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, we're going to vote for the boards and commissions that we interviewed 2 weeks ago. Once again, if there are no 5 votes given to any one person, we'll re-advertise for that position again. So, architectural board, we need 2 vacancies. Is there a motion for the first vacancy?
Dennis
Mr.
Sachs.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say Dennis Sachs.
Pardon?
Dennis Sachs.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by John. Okay, is there a motion for the second person?
Don't we have to vote on it?
We need to vote on that one.
I thought we'd vote together. Okay, you want to vote on that one? Individually. All right, at this time, make the motion. It was made. Discussion? None? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, so that's the first appointed one. For the second person, is there a motion?
I wanted to make a motion for Kevin Kugel.
I'll second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I guess we're going to go with a show of hands. All in favor, put your hand up. 2. All opposed? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Is there any other motion?
Make a motion for Valerie Landis.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Turner. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
I think that's, all right, that fails. So, we have the one, Dennis will be your first appointed person, and we'll have to re-advertise for the next one. Moving on to Board of Building Appeals, we need 2 vacancies. The one current member reapplied, and we don't have another one. So is there a motion?
I'll also move.
Roger, then Robin? Yeah. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, thank you. For Board of Zoning Appeals, 1 vacancy. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
For who, Robert?
Stephen Protzman, second.
All right. And who seconded it?
Heidi.
Heidi? Is there any discussion? Seeing no discussion, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes too. All right, thank you. For the ones that didn't get reappointed, we'll re-advertise. So, need a motion to authorize the insert of the names into the legislation.
So moved.
Second. Second by Roger. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-116 in title only?
Draft number 2021-116, a resolution appointing Dennis Sachs to the Architectural Review Board and declaring an emergency.
Suspension.
Second. Second by Roger. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
And Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second. Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, all in favor, call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Robin Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Tracy Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Okay. Resolution 2021-116 has passed.
Okay, would the clerk please read draft number 2021-117 in title only?
Draft number 2021-117, a resolution appointing Robert Rummel to the Board of Building Appeals and declaring an emergency.
So moved.
Move suspension. Second.
Robin, then Garrett seconded it. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
And Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Resolution 2021-117 is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-118 in title only?
Draft number 2021-118, a resolution appointing Stephen Protzman to the Board of Zoning Appeals and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Heidi. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second. Second by Roger. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Resolution 2021-118 is passed.
Okay, thank you. That's all there is for committee of the whole. Moving into community development, Mr. Kuhar.
Move to approve the committee meetings from November 3rd and the three actions.
Separate the meetings, please.
Pardon me?
Separate the minutes, please.
Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
You mean the actions?
The actions from the minutes.
No, the actions from the minutes.
Minutes.
I'll second
Only
the
1
minutes.
minute.
There's only 1 minute.
Yeah.
Yeah, separate the minute from the actions.
Oh, okay.
We did.
Move to approve the minutes.
I second it.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Mr. Kuhar, further?
Okay, we move action number 1.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ferrer. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
No.
Aye.
Wait, 2 noes?
Yeah.
It one suspension?
No, I said no.
All right,
2 noes.
okay, 2 noes. All right. It still passes.
Okay, B.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ferrer. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, that passes.
And action number C.
Second.
Second by Mr. Ferrer. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Moving into the ordinance, with the clerk read draft number 2021-119 in title only.
Draft number 2021-119, an ordinance authorizing the City of Kent, Ohio as a state-designated certified local government, CLG, to administer a grant being submitted from Todd Packer and Associates, LLC, to the Ohio History Connection Certified Local Government Grant Program for fiscal year 2022 and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Mike. please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Adoption.
Second by Garrett. Any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-119 is passed.
Thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-120 in title only?
Draft number 2021-120, an ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to renew the agreement between Main Street Kent and the City of Kent for another 3 years to promote economic development and revitalization to the city and declaring an emergency.
Move adoption. Or, I'm sorry, move suspension.
Second. Second by Roger. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Mike. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-120 is passed.
Okay, thank you.
That completes the community development section.
All right, thank you. Streets and sidewalks, Mr. Sidoti.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move the committee meeting minutes for November 3rd, 2021. Second.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Robin. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One abstention.
I'd also like to move the 2 actions that are listed.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on the actions? All in favor of the actions, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-121 in title only?
Draft number 2021-121, an ordinance authorizing the City of Kent to submit a Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Funding Application, TASA, in the amount of $700,000, and execute the subsequent agreement with AMATS to improve the East Main Street Improvement Project and to accept the grant if awarded with corresponding appropriation of funds and declaring an emergency.
Move
Second.
suspension.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Suspension.
Oh,
Go ahead.
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Okay, ordinance 2021-121 is passed.
Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-122 in title only?
Draft number 2021-122, an ordinance authorizing the City of Kent to submit a Transportation Alternative Set-Aside Funding Application, TASA, in the amount of $483,100, and execute the subsequent agreement with AMATS to design and acquire right-of-way for the final segment of the Portage Hike and Bike Trail, and to accept the grant if awarded with correspondent appropriation of funds and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Please call the roll on suspension.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar? Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Adoption.
Second.
Second by Garrett. Is there any discussion on adopting this ordinance? No discussion. Please call the roll on adoption.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeon?
Yes.
Ordinance 2021-122 is passed.
Okay, thank you. That's it for streets and sidewalks. Finance Committee, Mr. DeLeon.
Yeah, I'll move the committee meeting minutes from November 3rd, 2021.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Abstain.
One abstain.
And I'll also like to move the recommendations, number A, or letter A.
Second.
Second by Roger. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Okay, thank you. Would the clerk read draft number 2021-123 in title only?
Draft number 2021-123, a resolution requesting the county auditor to advance any property taxes that have been collected prior to the normal February settlement date from the proceeds of the 2021 tax year collection pursuant to Section 321.34 of the Ohio Revised Code.
Move suspension.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, wait.
You gotta let her do
No,
that.
she's gotta Let's do suspension. Garrett,
No.
don't bother
Move
me.
adoption.
No, it's
No, we gotta do
we gotta do a roll
suspension.
call.
No, we haven't done a roll call yet.
That's what you were
Anymore,
supposed
we
to.
all lost track.
Roll call.
Roll
Mr.
call.
Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes. Move adoption.
Second.
Is there any
Roll call, right?
discussion on adopting this? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. Farrar?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach?
Yes.
And Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Resolution 2021-123 is passed.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Finance Committee, is there any unfinished business? Tracy, have,
No, I'm right with that.
oh, any new business? Tracy?
Yeah, this council agenda that you found is very nice. It just gives the order of things. What I had more requested was something that explains what happens. Like, remember how you explained to the audience last time that committee
Okay.
meetings is only I think that would be nice.
We'll work on that between now and getting in a new building. How's that? Okay. John?
Yeah, in the past few weeks, we've had animal control come out for dogs at large in our neighborhood. The officer was telling me that between her and Ronnie, they came out 7 times in the month of October, equipped with a stick and a hoop, trying to catch a large dog that wouldn't get closer to 50 foot away from them. And I asked the animal control person, I said, well, would you have a gun that shoots a net or one of those tranquilizer darts? I said, like Portage County, or even a big cage. And they said, no, they don't have any of that equipment. And I just thought that was kind of awful, for one, that, you know, they've come out and waste all of their time and taxpayers' dollars and be improperly equipped for the job that they're trying to do. But they show up, and not only animal control, some of the uniformed officers that come out, but, you know, how do you catch a, 85-pound dog that doesn't want you to catch it? And these aren't mean animals, they're just nuisance animals. And, I would like to make a motion that we put into committee discussing equipping our animal control people with the proper equipment to do their job.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Second by Robin. Are you talking about it's kind of a budgetary situation?
And, well, yeah, it'd take money.
All right. So is there any discussion on the motion? When?
I guess I'm interested, is this something that Marla or the police department has requested, that it's something that they need or they want or they could use? If I'm not, did they express that these are things that they would like to have? Or maybe if Chief is here, is this something that
Let me put it this
department's
way.
interested in?
Wait a minute.
Put it in committee.
Let's get Gwen's question. She asked the chief something
Wait a motion.
on the motion.
Am I allowed to ask the chief that?
Well, you're discussing the motion, I guess. Go ahead.
I would say that no requests have come through our department for additional equipment from Ron or Marla. They have the catch poles. They do have. I don't know why you were told they don't have large cages. They do have large cages. They're kept on the truck that they have, so they do have the large cages. I know one of the things that was mentioned here was like a tranquilizer gun. I would strongly oppose that from a training standpoint more than anything. the accuracy, I mean, if we're talking about not being able to get closer than 50 feet away from an animal, to expect them to fire a gun or some sort of tranquilizer gun from that distance away at a moving animal in mostly residential areas in our city, I don't think from a safety perspective that's a good idea. So
Okay.
I would strongly oppose that.
All right, does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All right, Mr. Kuhar, further on the discussion of the motion now.
Yeah, as I say, the animal control people, in my opinion, felt that they were ill-equipped to do the job. And, you know, we're not necessarily talking about a moving target. The dog will stay 50 foot in front of them and stop, as a lot of them do. When we were in Portage County, when they had that problem, they come out and they were able to capture every animal that was loose and not waste a lot of time doing it. So I don't know. I think it's something worth talking about.
Does anybody else have discussion on this? Okay, all in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
I see 3, so I think it passed.
Thank you.
All right, is there any other new business? Council members' comments? Mr. Sidoti?
Yeah, first of all, Robin, thank you for holding this meeting. I don't know that any of us on council were aware of it. I know I wasn't aware of it. On November 11th, was anyone else invited to the community meeting on the intergenerational? Okay. Yeah, I didn't. I feel bad about it. I could have been here.
I found out at the last minute, but I had another engagement, so I couldn't do it.
I didn't. I think that these are the types of things that we all need to be aware of and hopefully be part of. And secondly, well, I don't want anything else on my plate right now. Dave, I would be more than willing to, if the university, is open to having a council person, I'd be willing. I have a little more time than a lot of the people on council, so I would be more than willing to act as someone to speak on behalf of the community members.
Any other comments? Mr. Turner?
Yeah, first off, I wanted to extend a thank you to Wendy and some of the other community members and people in that neighborhood area for taking initiative to speak up regarding their concern. Additionally, I want to thank our city manager. I had a lengthy conversation with him today regarding the issue, and also while I'm on it, Heidi, who stepped up and was one of the individuals who helped us get information out to the residents. To be blunt about it, I don't think if Heidi hadn't really pushed it that would have occurred. So kudos to her and to Randy, her husband. My conversation with David was, I think, very productive. There were, I think issues of concern that were expressed on in some areas, but I think we both came to an agreement that we were speaking from the same page, and that the university was also on that page. We don't want to draw too much distance, especially at this juncture where there's nothing really on the table. Our hope is that we do the educational component, that we ensure participation for the people in the neighborhood, that we have, at the end of the day, the things that Dave and I talked about were understanding our limitations as a city. There are some things we can't do, that authority lies outside our bounds, but that we can advocate for. And that is the thing that we're going to try and ensure. At the end of the day, who knows? But I think that there's no reason to question that we want to represent your interest to the degree that we can. And we're going to do that. There are going to be differences. There are in any situation like the one we're confronting regarding this. there are a lot of positives to the issue of an intergenerational village. You stated it, Wendy, when you said you're a member of an intergenerational village. I never even really thought of that, but you actually hit it right on the head. And so we're basically mimicking things. There are things that we can do that I think with this possibility, if we get your participation early on, and that we're able to actually then start moving forward. No guarantees from our part. We don't have control over the university other than jawboning and advocating. But understand, we do represent you. And I think we understand that. And I think all of us do. And if we don't, hit us over the head and let us know that you understand it and that we better understand it. So, congratulations. I hope that you continue to do what you're doing. But please, I've said this before, and I think in our conversation today, let's not put ourselves in a situation where we're being adversarial unnecessarily. There are opportunities here as well. Let's really look toward that, and our hope is that we will we'll be able to find a silver lining in some of the aspects that may be a little cloudy. So let's take it from there. I'm glad to hear Roger, some of the others, and like I said, Heidi's been on this before I was, and and the mayor for being available, and all the other councils. We're going to be there for you, and hopefully this will be something that we'll all be proud of at the end of the day. Whether or not it comes to fruition, the interaction and the opportunity exists. Let's move forward and take advantage of it.
Got it? Heidi?
Yeah, that's well stated, Robin. I just wanted to reiterate that, we were concerned that it's very difficult to get information out into the community. There are very few methods for that. But the university, the people from the university that were there did take contact information from the people that were at that meeting. I hope that we can continue to build a contact list. However, I do want to say that Robin and I felt citizen engagement was really important, especially including the neighborhoods that would be near the project, but also across the city, because there are people that are really interested in being a part of this project, possibly, making sure that it turns out to be a really great project with minimal negatives to the community. So I think that we have learned over the years that when we have engaged citizens, that we do better projects. And I think that that's what we're all hoping for when the developer is selected, and that we can get moving on discussion about the actual project versus a we don't know kind of answer.
Anybody else?
One more thing, Mr. Mayor.
Go ahead.
I would say that intergenerational village, really what we would like to see is it integrated into the whole community. It becomes part of the fabric of their community. And for that to happen, I think that when there is potential conflict, I think that there are opportunities, like Robin said, that we can turn those potential conflicts into opportunities that both sides are going to be happy about, whether it be the university and the community or the neighborhood that lives there, the neighborhood members. I think there's opportunities here all around to build a better relationship with Kent State University. To me, that's critical.
Further from anybody? I guess for the mayor's report, first I want to ask us to do our duty. We still need some boards and commission members. The next filing date is Wednesday, November the 24th. We need civil service, design preservation, fair housing, income tax review board, loan review board, planning commission, shade tree commission, stormwater district retention, appeals board. So do our best, get the word out. Like I said, the date they have to apply by November 24th, 2021. With that said, it's the season. Next week's Thanksgiving. I want to wish you all happy Thanksgiving. I know we've been through a lot with the virus and a few other things going on, but there is always something to be thankful for, so just remember that. With that said, I need a motion to go into executive session. Mr. Ferrer?
I would move for a motion for an executive session immediately following the meeting in accordance with Ohio Revised Codes 121.22, Section G, Item 4, preparing for, conducting, or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Items to be discussed tonight are contract negotiations.
Roll call.
Mr. Ferrara?
Yes.
Mr. DeLeo?
Yes.
Mr. Kuhar?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Ms. Wallach? Yes. Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoni?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes. Okay, we'll give them 5 minutes to clear their room. The people that need to stay are Consul, Mr.